Welcome back, gang. It's Blake. I'm having an incredibly difficult time getting this to work. But first of all, I wanted to explain this on my face. I didn't use my moisturizer yesterday, and today, whenever I did, it's just like so irritated. So I just want to get that out of the way. But anyway, one of the main questions that I'm asked has been how did I know that I had liver disease, or like what were some of the symptoms? And I wanted to talk about some of those today. And please don't take any of this as like a self-diagnosis, because again, I'm not a doctor. These are just some of the symptoms that happened to me and happen to be some of the most common. So if there is something, especially maybe one or two on here that you're worried about, go see a doctor, because really the only person who can diagnose you properly is your doctor. And the sooner you go, if you think that you have issues with your liver, the better off you'll be. There's still time to turn it around if you get there soon enough. But I also wanted to say that alcohol was my gateway into liver disease, but it's not the only way. So if any of this sounds like, you can have like fatty liver disease is fairly common, hepatitis, obviously. So if any of this sounds like something, especially if there's more than one, go to the doctor and get checked out. So I wanted to start today with a couple that we've already discussed before. The ascites, which is the buildup of fluid in your abdomen area that just doesn't go away on its own, that you'll have to take diuretics for, that the doctor will prescribe for you. Or if it's bad enough, that usually on that first time that you notice it kind of is bad enough, that they'll go in and remove some of that. Plus they just want to, every time they do that, they want to test the fluid inside it to make sure that it's not cancerous, and to get that out of the way. But I mean, there are people, like I get them every now and then, like I've said before, but mostly as a cosmetic thing. It's not that I really need them, but there are people who swell up so much and so often that they have to go like sometimes every other week, sometimes 2 times a week, because they're just so swollen and uncomfortable that they almost can't even walk for themselves. A lot of times these people will have to be brought in on wheelchairs and things like that. So it can get really out of control. So if you notice that your abdomen is swelling up and there's really no explanation for it, that's something to absolutely get checked out. Something else, and I wanted to, well, before I get into this one, because we've already talked about this too, but I just want to say some of this stuff, I want to make a graphic note again. Some of this stuff is not, it's not really gross, but I mean, if you're squeamish at all, you may just want to maybe not listen to this one. But I promise nothing is too bad, especially nothing that adults haven't heard already. But so the other thing that I wanted to talk about was jaundice, which is when the yellowing occurs, when the bilirubin builds up inside your body and your liver can't process those toxins out. So things like your eyes and your hands, certain things that were normally white or clear before will start to turn yellow, and that's a super obvious sign of liver problems. I know the babies get it a lot. I don't know anything to do with baby jaundice, so I'm just going to ignore that completely, because that's probably something totally different, but I have no idea. Another thing that happens, and a couple of these times, as adults, which I'm assuming most people are already, we just have to get used to, at a certain point, talking to doctors and other people about like urine and stools and bowel movements. So if you're not used to that yet, your time is coming, but for the rest of us, you know that this really isn't something that we need to feel embarrassed about. They're just natural things. So another thing, if you're having, if you notice that your urine is unusually like dark brown or dark yellow, not necessarily from time to time, because lots of things can cause that. But if it's consistent and if it's like all day long, then this could be a sign that there's something wrong with your liver. And this also a lot of times will coincide with kidneys, because liver disease can contribute to kidney disease as well. So they're all like, your doctors will want to monitor both of those things at least initially, because they're both they both can be fatal, and they both can interact with one another so easily. So if you're noticing that your urine is unusually dark or yellow, and it's been that way consistently, that's something that you want to get checked out. Along with that would come, like, if there's an odor kind of that you're just not used to. Like, I mean, we all know that there are certain things that we drink and certain things that we eat that make urine smell different or whatever. But if you're noticing something that's unusual and it's consistent, then that's something you want to get checked out. Another thing is irritated skin, which I did happen to have a lot of, and this comes because the flow of fluid in your skin where it should be is not as there's not as much as there needs to be. So while you may have a lot of fluid building up down here, you don't have a lot flowing through into your skin like you need to. So what this really led to for me was a lot of itching, like in the abdominal area. That was one of the first things that I noticed immediately. Was I was super itchy, and especially the spots that were like bloating from the ascites would be like almost unbearably itchy sometimes, especially after I took a shower and my skin would tend to dry up on its own. Then it was just so itchy sometimes I almost couldn't stand it. And then, like, that was one of the things they initially asked, like, is your skin especially itchy in your abdominal area? And I was like, yeah, like it's never been before. And then it became kind of a thing where I couldn't stop. Like, I had to find some way just to scratch it, but it would also become like scabbed easily. So that was becoming a problem, and eventually I had to just kind of cover it up so I would leave it alone, because it was unbearable, the itchiness coming from my stomach. Eventually that did go away, and people have asked me before if itchiness was a sign, and for me it was absolutely a sign. But it did go away. Any of this that I talk about, if your liver disease is related to alcoholic abuse, any of this, whenever I say things went away, is all because I stopped drinking. Like, if you continue to drink, I can't promise anything that will happen, but it won't end well. It will end, and it will not end well. So I'm just gonna make that note. But the itchiness went away because I was watching what I was eating, trying to eat as healthy as possible, taking all my meds the way that they were prescribed. I did everything to the letter that I was supposed to do. Also, if you notice, moving beyond the skin, your changes in your bowel movements or in your stool, like if you're consistently constipated, that can be an issue. Anything that changes and kind of stays that way, if it's consistent and it's not what you're used to, that's something to get checked out. Again, like with if you're constipated, then your body's not able to remove the toxins that it needs to, and that can lead to something that I alluded to in an earlier video and what I'll end with today. But again, if anything changes, if you just have diarrhea all the time, if you're constipated all the time, also they will want to know from this point, if you ever go in and you have liver disease, they'll want to know, what does your stool look like? If it is ever like black or especially tarry, which this never happened to me to notice, but if it looks tarry and almost like it's just an unusual substance, then that is something to get checked out immediately, because that's most likely blood that you most likely have an inner, you're mostly bleeding internally, and that is serious concern. Like I've mentioned, it has almost killed me before, and it's absolutely fatal. It can be. So these are all things that you really need to pay attention to, not just what you're putting into your body, but what's coming out of it. Something else, nausea may or may not be an issue. It was for me at a certain point. Just digestion problems in general seem to worsen, like acid reflux, just different things like that. You become kind of a little more less able to handle certain foods, and your stomach will be upset a lot easier than it used to be by certain things. And sometimes they're things that were never even an issue before. And this can also lead to a total loss of appetite, which can lead to being super underweight, which is when mine started to kick in. If you leave it untreated long enough, your liver issues, then your body just naturally, you get exhausted, you just lose all sense of appetite, and that's where the rapid weight loss comes in. And for me, like, by the time I went to the mental rehab place, I was down to weighing about 130 pounds, and like all of this, like, I mean, I was almost skeletal looking, way worse than now. And that was just because I couldn't hold anything down. Even drinking water, or the thought of drinking things to help me go to the bathroom, I couldn't do it. I remember there was a time I drank some of the stuff that, this sodium mixture that helps you go to the bathroom if you're so constipated, which I was, because I wasn't eating and I wasn't really drinking anything. So of course, what little is in my stomach is not going to come out easily. So I drank this stuff, and I ended up throwing every bit of it back up because I just couldn't keep it down. Loss of appetite is fairly common in later stages. But for me, again, that did come back by doing all the things that I was supposed to do. The ascites that gains in your abdomen is different than a normal fluid retention. But liver disease can also lead to fluid retention. And every time that I've gone to my doctors since having this issue, they always will look at my ankles and my feet to make sure that there's no swelling. If there's swelling, that means that your body's not creating these proteins and it's not able to circulate them around. So all of your blood is gathering where the gravity takes it down to your feet and your ankles. So if you ever can, like, press in, this is an issue that I've never had, luckily. But if you, like, can press into your leg, and you may already know this, but anywhere like on your calf or bone, and it stays indented for just a little bit, that's kind of what we're talking about. That's a sign that the blood's not circulating. as it should be. And if that happens when you have liver disease, it's not a good sign, especially because you're not going to be able to produce those proteins anyway. So that's definitely something that they're going to check you for every time. Um, and they want to make sure that your blood is clotting, because it will lead to unusual bruising or easy bruising, which I have had in the past I had some issues with that, but I've also my entire life been prone to like nosebleeds. So how much of that came from my liver disease, I don't really know, but I've always, and especially like when I was drinking all the time, I would wake up with bruises all over me, and who knows where they came from. So it's hard to say in that sense for me, but definitely I think it's safe to assume that I was probably bruising on my own pretty easily. The exhaustion and fatigue is probably one of the main symptoms that comes from liver disease, and it can eventually lead to, like, if you don't figure out what this is and it goes untreated, it can lead to just a bad way of living. It could lead to being bedridden. It can lead to coma. Just all of these things, and that comes from what you're eating and what they need to be able to diagnose this. So if you need like a blood transfusion, they can do that. Since I'm on the organ donor transplant list, they don't want to give me too many blood transfusions in order to keep my antibodies as low as possible for a new liver to be introduced to my body, and my body not trying to fight it. But I have had blood transfusions before, and I've had iron infusions, and I mean, just these are things that definitely, if you're feeling fatigued and you need them, they will immediately help, especially a blood transfusion. But if you're just feeling incredible fatigue, that's something that you should always get checked out. Not necessarily if you're worried about liver issues or not. If you're feeling overly fatigued, that's a sign you need to go to the doctor. It may or may not be a big deal, but it's better to have it looked at than not. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about, with whenever I had mentioned the like constipation and things like that, and toxins building up in your body, that's what leads to the liver or hepatic encephalopathy, which is when the toxins are unable to be removed from your blood. So these toxins are traveling to everywhere that your blood's pumping, which eventually is going to lead to your head, which causes confusion, disorientation, memory loss. It's pretty much, if you've reached this stage and you're not being treated for liver disease yet, you need to be immediately, because this is definitely an end stage liver disease symptom, and it's absolutely, it can be fatal. So on that note, again, if you're experiencing any of these issues, I can tell you that for me, I had most of them, and most of them at the same time. So just to let you know, at the point that I was definitely experiencing more than one of these. But if you're experiencing one or two, or anything is consistent, and you just want to have it checked out, go to the doctor. I can't stress how important it is to get to the doctor, because how fast you get there can make all the difference. Your liver can regenerate. It can heal itself, like we've talked about before. But once you get to the point that I was at late stage cirrhosis, these things won't, like, that liver is so scarred that the only thing I can do is to get it replaced, is to get a transplant. So there's any of these things that may sound cumbersome on their own. They absolutely are important, but it's also important to remember that if you deal with them soon enough, you don't have to get to the point where I am now. So on that note, if you found this useful, like this channel, subscribe, like this video, and leave some comments. If you're worried about anything, ask me some questions. I can help you with whatever experience I have, and I would be happy to do that. And on that note, I also wanted to add that I started training for my new job as a crisis counselor yesterday, and I think it's going to be amazing. It may or may not be the place where I stay, but I'm going to use that training for all I can get out of it, and we will see where that leads. So wish me luck on that. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.